All right, I will call the September. Not the 10th. I always read that top one. The Richland County Executive and Finance Standing Committee to order. Roll call, please, Mr. Kalish.
Carol.
Here.
Manny. Here. Gills.
Here.
Glassburner.
Here.
Kirk.
Here.
Frank. Williamson.
Here.
Cooley. Here. You have 7 present at the point.
Okay, thank you. Verification of open meetings law compliance.
Securely meetings proper.
Agenda approval, item number 4. 22-point agenda. Motion by Mr. Manning, seconded by Mr. Gill. Any discussion on the agenda as presented? If not, all those in favor of approving the agenda as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, we have an agenda. Approval of the minutes from the August 13th, 2024 meeting. Nobody has any corrections, changes? I will declare them approved as presented. Item 6, public comment. Public comment. Anybody in the public would like to make a comment? Elaine.
Do I speak as public or how do you do that one?
What have we decided on? We haven't made a decision on.
If
It's gonna be
future
discussed.
agenda items, yeah, would be that. Does it have to do with something on the agenda?
Pardon?
Does it have to do with an item that's on the agenda?
I think somewhat it does. Yes.
Because you're gonna speak as the public, not as your role as a supervisor.
It's a public complaint,
Public
public concern.
concern.
Yes.
Sure, give it to us.
Okay. I've been questioned about the role of corporate counsel and why Mr. Wendell is assuming HR responsibilities. Recently, an employee at Pine Valley received a termination letter and the disciplinary process was not followed as the county policy indicates. This employee received their first discipline, their second discipline, and was handed this letter indicating this all on the same day when asked to attend a meeting. This is not following county policy. It was unnecessary to have corporate counsel and Justin from HR together there at Pine Valley. I also want to say that I have received supportive emails and messages stating what a wonderful, caring employee this is. Thank you.
We'll take that in consideration. All right, anybody else with public comment? Reports. Item number 7A, administrative report, preliminary budget.
Okay, so before we get into the budget discussion this evening, you have a lot of documents in front of you about labor cost analysis at Pine Valley. So we're going to talk about those first. So Angela, would you like to join us for the discussion, pretty please? So the first document that you have that I'd like you to pull up and look at is this one here. So Angela prepared this document for us because she was receiving a lot of questions from staff regarding the fact that they felt as though we needed to use agency staffing, that we were not adequately staffed to accommodate additional residents. And so in response to that, she surveyed surrounding nursing homes, varying star ratings. Majority of them are 5-star, as you will see here. And she also, evaluated those based on the federal regulations and what those federal requirements are. So as outlined here, well, actually, I'll let Angela speak to this. It's her area of expertise.
All right, so the state came out with new regulations. When COVID hit, the state kind of just wiped out that we could have as many people as we want or as many less people taking care of these residents because there was no help. Now that COVID is pretty well wiped out, the federal regulations have came back and said now nursing homes have to have so many people taking care of these residents. As you see, we have to have 3.48 hours per day of direct care. So that is somebody that's actually taking care of that resident. .55 hours has to be from an RN, and we currently have to have an RN in the building 24/7. Before you could have one that was on call, but now you have to have an RN in the building 24/7. 2.45 hours has to be a direct care by a CNA. It cannot be anybody else. And then 0.48 hours can be either an LPN, another RN, or a med aid is like a med tech. And as you see down through here, most places are averaging 1 nurse to 20 residents. Most of the facilities are doing 1 CNA to every 9 residents. So when you figure it out, the federal regulation is 1 CNA to every 8 residents. You have to be in compliant by 2027, or you will start getting fined by the federal government. So these places here have some work to do to try to get new staff. So I was always getting told, we can't take admissions because we're understaffed, we need agency in here, we're understaffed. Well, as everybody know, agency costs, a nurse costs $85 an hour, a CNA costs $50 an hour to have a good agency staff. We at Pine Valley are running with, so a total of 60 residents, because I use like what our average census is right now. We need to have 208 hours, 8.8 hours per day. Right now at Pine Valley, the way when I came into this position, if you look, we are running at 242.13 hours is what we are running at. So we are overstaffed, and that is not including my DON, 2 charge nurse, or 2 RN managers, 1 charge nurse, 2 unit clerks, 2 restorative aides, and a nursing scheduler. So those other 9 staff members are running around that building also helping out. And I know there's been complaints out there that Pine Valley's not staffing adequately, that's why we're not taking residents. So I just, for my sanity, I guess I'm gonna say, is I just showed this to my staff and so we are not. So if you look at it, Pine Valley, we're a 5-star facility like a lot of the other ones. Our nurses are averaging 1 nurse to every 14 CNA, or sorry, every 14 residents. Our CNAs, we're running 1 CNA to every 6.5 residents.
So if you look at that comparatively from a staffing perspective, our staff is doing far better as far as work expectation than those that are running 1 to 9, 1 to 10, or 1 to 10, 1 to 18, or 1 to 25. And so we are very, very adequately staffed. And when you look at then that expectation of care at 208.8 hours per day, which is the minimum requirement, we are far exceeding that with 242.13 hours with just the required staffing. On top of that, we are providing an additional 67.05 hours of care. So daily, we are providing an additional 100.38 hours of care. And so we are far, far, far exceeding requirements. And so we wanted to be very, very clear on that as we go into this discussion of operations and what we have historically been seeing and why we're going to be shifting gears. We're not talking about cutting staff here. Let's just be very, very clear. But we are talking about managing more effectively and right sizing our staffing, looking at our overtime utilization, all of those things to make sure that the dollars that we are expending are being expended appropriately. So with that, we'll go into this Pine Valley. Yes,
Can I ask a question? It's great, by the way, but I'm just curious. When you're looking at these, does it take into account like what maybe acuity would be, dementia care versus
Correct.
assisted living? So it's still.
So I hear
Very
you,
long.
Schmidt Woodland Hills, for an example. One of their wings is actually like, they're like an above care, so they're a lot harder residents to take care of. Honestly, our acuity out at Pine Valley is, I've worked in a lot of different nursing homes. It's pretty easy out there. And I will use an example. 2 weeks ago, I worked on the floor as a CNA because our staff was short, and I'm the type of administrator that if we're short, I'm gonna go help my staff. There was 8 of us there with 63 residents. By 8:30, we were all sitting down in the family room, just answering call lights. So yes, it is doable.
Thank you.
So the next piece is the labor cost analysis. And so this is just giving you just facts and figures, strictly data-driven information that will lead us into the next piece of our discussion. So the first page you'll see is our historical census. And this is data that's given to the Pine Valley Board every single month. We track this historically. It's available all the time to anyone who would like to see it. And this shows over the years where our census has been on a monthly occurrence. So you can see that we've averaged from a high of, our highest is what, 71.45? 72.1, I guess, is the highest. We had 1 month of 75 in 2022. Other than that, we're averaging right around that, 64 is our overall average in 2023. 68 in 2021. So you'll see it's in the upper 60s overall. Then on the right there, you can see our historical employee numbers. And you can look and see that, essentially the average on the bottom is anywhere between 140 to 145 across the years for employees. So not a huge variation in census really on an average, and not a huge variation in employees. So we're not seeing large swings that would indicate we should see large swings in our staffing. If you saw these huge variations in census, it would make sense to see huge variations in employment. But we're not seeing those when you look at it for, a labor comparison. On the next page then, if you look at the staffing or the cost comparison from 2022 to 2024, you'll see what our total annual salary costs are. And then in the highlighted columns, you'll see what our overtime costs have been and what our agency costs have been. And what I think is really somewhat alarming is that you'll notice huge increases from 2022 to 2021 to 2022. You'll notice that overtime didn't go up as significantly, but our agency costs in 2021 were $42,000, and in 2022 they were $416,000. Now that's quite a swing, especially without a significant swing in either employment numbers going way down or census numbers going way up. Yes.
I don't know what agency.
Agency is nurse staffing agency that we were talking about. So you bring in a staff from outside agency and they cost us over $80 an hour for a nurse and about $55 an hour for a CNA.
So the numbers before included agency hours as opposed to direct employees?
Well, we had a full staff of direct employees, plus then we're piling on using agency staff.
I guess that's my point. I would think if we've got a lot of hours being added by the agency we brought in, that should be part of what we're looking at for our staffing.
That's what I was referencing. We didn't see a huge swing. We didn't see our actual staff go way down, but yet we saw our agency costs go way up.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying our employed staff stayed stable, but you're saying we've been supplementing that with agency people coming in.
Correct.
And I'm saying that's your real ratio of nurses to patients or whatever, right? Wouldn't that be something we'd want to compare with other places?
No,
Why not?
because we were overstaffing. We were significantly overstaffing. I'm not seeing, I guess, what you're saying. I'm not understanding what you're asking.
Okay. I would like to see it instead of just dollars, I'd like to see it in terms of personnel, total personnel. Our employees plus the staff. people.
They're right
Right
here.
here,
They're right above.
employee numbers.
Oh, the page above. That's where our employee numbers are listed.
But they didn't go up
Right.
significantly.
But
So
no,
what
that's I'm
happened
saying.
to
This
the
does
other
not
regular
include
staff?
staffing hours, correct?
That is staffing
No, I
hours.
mean,
Staffing personnel,
people that are not employees.
That's everybody across the board. So if you're looking across 2024, you've got 5 million in annual salary. You've got $334,000 in overtime. Then you also have $191,000 in agency employment.
And that's what I'm trying to understand. When you go
Yep.
back to the historical employee numbers, for example, in August of this year, it says 141. Is that both county employees
No.
plus agency?
No,
That's what I'm
only-
getting at. I
Okay,
think I would want to see a total of employees plus agency piece of people run in to see what our true staffing level is. Does that not make sense?
well, it does, but what we're telling you already is that with what we have just on our own staff, we're overstaffed.
Fine.
So those agency numbers, realistically, anything that we have paid for that is reflected here is over and above what we really should be paying for because we're already overstaffed based on what the requirements are.
Understood, but the
So-
ratios of CNAs to all those things would be even more, if you include all of the agency man hours that were brought in, it would make it even more,
Beaches.
yeah.
It would be more egregious, you're right. I mean, the dollars reflect that. I mean, we can get the body count, but all of the dollars are reflected here.
On the dollars.
So we can probably get the billings from, because that is broken out in the monthly billings. We get that Pine Valley sees every month. The amount of money spent each month on agency is in those billings, and it has been split out by month. So I know we can go back and we can pull that information and provide that. That we can do.
Ingrid has it.
Yes, Ingrid, sorry.
Those first numbers in the annual salary, that does not include the additional agency numbers?
It does not. That is just our own
And
staff.
then that would be on it.
Correct. So as you can see though, you know, you look at 2022, 2023, you've got $471,000 in overtime and $416,000 in agency, $549,000 in overtime and $700,000 in agency cost. And now this year, we've significantly reduced, and these are year-to-date numbers, overtime, 334,000 and 191. And boy, last pay period alone, we reduced overtime by what, 60 hours?
Yeah.
Just by paying attention to, and some of these are policies, in looking at the way that policies were written. There is a policy that you get overtime after 8 hours, and we had some people being scheduled for 16-hour shifts. Why we're scheduling people for 16-hour shifts when we know that they're going to be basically earning overtime on half of that shift doesn't quite make sense. So, yes.
Another question back to Steve's point. So I'm not arguing the overstaffing based on the federal regulations, et cetera. But when he was saying, looking at other numbers, are those other nursing homes also bringing in this amount of agency that would pad their number? You know, would it make their numbers similar to ours? Do they have even more agency nurses? Are they
I
utilizing?
do know Riverdale is almost all agency that runs that facility.
So when you're looking at these numbers that you have here that say, where is it at? 1 nurse to 25 average, is that including the agency? Or if we had
Yes.
agency
So
in?
they're a 50-bed facility. They have 2 wings.
Mhm.
They have 1 nurse down this one that does 25. They have 1 nurse down there that does 25. And that's all they staff for day shift, PM shift. Night shift is 1 nurse for 50 residents.
Okay,
Yep.
and so you think the other places are similar?
I'm
They're
not sure
adding
about
these
Schmidt,
numbers?
how they are doing, but I do know Heartland, 'cause I'm very good friends with the administrator. Basketball is the same way. Greenway has pretty much all of their own staff. They got, you know, they're closer to Madison. They have pretty much all their own staff. Upland Hills, they currently are using agency because a lot of their staff is leaving. Ridgeway, because I don't know a lot about that facility. And then, of course, right now, we do not have any agency, but I am going to have to bring in 1 due to 2 staff members leaving, so.
Okay, question is, who determines the staffing and how is that
figured out, or, what,
So by regulations, it's CMS and the federal government that sets our rules.
so we are,
So we're fine. We're flying under the radar perfect in the federal government and state. But, I mean, we're perfect. We're not gonna have to, like, some of these facilities, they're gonna have to really buckle down in the next 2 years to get to that 8 residents. But like on our end out at the facility, it is, I go by the state regulations, but say like one hallway has, cause it's 20 and 20, say one hallway is full and one hallway has 15, but the other 2 only have like 10 and 10. So we might throw a float over on that side. I can't say, so they can help because there's more residents over there.
sure.
So we just kind of go figure it out between us all on how we do it, so.
So we're taking into account some of the different numbers
Mhm.
and trying to
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
costs down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're not trying to short staff.
No,
That's not the point
Well, it's
at all.
obvious that we're staffing as much or more than a lot of.
Correct, but we are trying to right size a little more and ensure that we're not staffing the way that we were. Part of the problem is we had a lot of on-call staff and not enough of our own full-time staff. That was a huge piece of it. You can't maintain on-call staff that wouldn't come in and work when you called them in. So we're addressing that situation. So we're finding those ways to create those efficiencies within with our own staff, right sizing, and ensuring that we're not paying those higher rates for staff that, comes in and is brought in from an agency. The other thing is, as we all know, when staff sees the same person day in and day out providing their cares, they would much rather have that than, a random person from an agency, and not saying that they're not wonderful caregivers, that's not the point, but, you build those relationships and that's important. So that's another piece of, maintaining our own staff, vice bringing in those agency costs. And so that's another important piece to highlight in this whole discussion, and that's an important part of creating those efficiencies as well. We've already discussed the next couple of pages, which is just the staffing requirements, so you can skip those and then go to the balance sheet page. It's really important just to highlight that Pine Valley has very healthy balances. Pine Valley has a very good amount of cash, and Larry, do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, right now they got operational, about 3.35 million in operational cash, and then they got designated funds of another $1 million. So altogether, they got about $4.4 million in funds.
Which is really important to know because they have money set aside for capital, so that if something breaks, something needs replacing, there's plenty of money set aside there. And it's always important to have cash operating reserves, so that if something were to happen, that they know that they can continue operations for a period of time, as we all need to be able to do, should there be some sort of catastrophic event.
So how many months of operation does that 3.3 million represent?
That 3.3 million is probably 5 months.
So-
Is there some metric that you're supposed to have so much cash on hand that,
We were looking at 3.
okay,
What we're thinking would be suitable for them.
so this
That's
is
about-
a big
Yeah,
chunk
that's
of
about,
extra
about
money,
2.5 is
basically.
what we're thinking
Okay.
operationally.
Okay, because it looks like a lot of money to me, yeah.
So, and so, very fiscally sound, very well situated, which is very good. On the next page, you will see the amounts that Pine Valley has over the years returned to the county towards their debt levy. And this is where there's been some confusion over the years, because it's been painted as though Pine Valley puts money into the general fund to pay the county to operate. And in fact, when Pine Valley returns money, it's returning money to offset the debt levy that pays for the building. Because that debt levy is about $1.4 million annually, and that debt levy has been paid by the taxpayers of Richland County each year. And that's something that has somehow been lost in translation since the renovation of Pine Valley. And so, and initially, I went back all the way back to the beginning of the documents, and there were a couple of different plans presented as to how that would take care of itself over time. And initially, there were two proposals made. One, which for 2017 and 2018, there was interest that would kind of pay that back, and by 2019, it would be a smaller contribution, and then 2020, a little larger contribution, and then 2021, until the end of the debt, it would be, you know, a stepped up contribution. And there was one proposal that the county would always carry $200,000 of the operational levy, and then the remainder would be tax levy. There was another where operational levy would never be used, and it would be split strictly between Pine Valley and then the taxpayer. Roughly 900,000 or 700,000, just depending on which version you looked at. But the intent was never for the county taxpayer, to continually carry this debt. And so in looking at all of that and looking at our financial situation, the decisions that we are faced with as a county, that's a significant piece of what our county taxpayers are contributing. And looking at the financial situation of Pine Valley, you know, we have to come up with a plan to figure out how we're going to ensure that those dollars are getting back towards paying that debt levy. And so that's why we're having this discussion now, because it looks as though realistically, there are dollars there that can be utilized towards paying Pine Valley's debt levy. You know, it'd be different if it wasn't solvent. And yes, we're still running a negative, you know, after depreciation, but making these steps, we do truly believe that we can get Pine Valley very, very close to being fiscally solvent. If not breaking even or even turning a profit for the first time, which is outstanding. That's exactly what we want. We consistently hear it's going to be sold. They're going to sell us. No, they're trying to get rid of us. No, we're trying to make it solvent. We're trying to make sure that that is the word that never has to be said ever again, because operations are efficient and effective, and we can ensure that the taxpayers don't have to subsidize the entire operation. That's what our goal is. And in looking at all of this, we're getting closer to that, and we can get closer to that. And that's what these steps are going to do. So that's the end of this explanation, and that will tie in now to our budget presentation. So with that, thank you, Andy. So you will see on the screen our preliminary budget. Remember, this is preliminary. This is open for discussion. If there are items you would like to see changed, discussed further, all of those things, we have time to do that. So this is based on the information we have. This is our suggestion to you. So with this budget, you will see an increase in investment income of $150,000. There will be no general fund balance, contingency funds, or ARPA funds used to balance our budget. This does include a 5% increase across the board to create a pool of wages that will be utilized to implement our wage study. In speaking with the consultant, they're still working through those job descriptions and figuring out who goes where, but they do feel with all the market analysis and all the market data that 5% will be adequate to walk everyone into that new wage scale this year. So that's what we have built into the budget. That doesn't mean everyone will see a 5% increase, but that will give us that wiggle room to make those adjustments as needed. We have seen a reduction in short-term borrowing for capital improvement projects this year. We conducted an audit of all of the projects that we had borrowed for in years past and discovered, surprisingly, that there was money there that people hadn't spent for a lot of projects. We borrow that money with the intent and expectation that those projects are done within the year the borrowing occurs. We have since found out, and because of our financial system not being able to keep up the way that we wanted it to, when I said, Larry, let's do an audit, Derek, let's do an audit. Yeah, we found money. And so because we had that money, we were able to say, nope, we're not gonna borrow money this year, we're gonna use the money that we have. And so that was wonderful. So we only had to borrow about $601,000 this year compared to the $1.2 million we've borrowed in past years. So that was a significant reduction in borrowing. In addition, rather than bonding for our short-term borrowing, this year we used a local bank. And so that saved us approximately $20,000 in bonding fees. New approach, other counties have used it before. Quite a bit of savings in time and in dollars. So really exciting, and we were able to give a local bank the business, which is also a wonderful thing, keeping that spending local.
Explain to me how that precludes a bond, just because of the local.
Yeah, what it says is there's about $20,000 in bond that we have to, virtually that we pay for to put together a bond. And that virtually they funded in November and we pay it back in March after they're left. So virtually we're borrowing for 5 months. It costs us $20,000 of bonding fees to borrow for 5 months. Where if we went to a local bank, we may pay a percent or more interest, but we wouldn't pay any bonding fees. So we save $20,000.
But that's what I'm asking. Why don't we require a bond for a local bank versus someone else?
Oh, well, a bond is where we're selling it out in the market, where the bonding fees is to make it so that our note is sellable on the market. That's what the bonding fees are for. They're the fees we pay to lawyers and the bonding company to ensure that our issuance of that short-term note is good. We don't have to do that because the bank's just gonna borrow us the money. We're gonna repay the bank. We're not putting it out the bond. Bond is when they put it out, sell bond. So that takes time, money, and effort. If you have to CYA yourself whenever you put a bond out, you gotta cover your this and that.
So it's not a bond, it's a loan.
It's a loan.
Okay,
Mhm.
right.
So if I can ask, I'm not a financial whiz by any means, but does this affect, I mean, in past years, we've talked a lot about our bond rating and what that's at. Is this going to affect that for future?
No, we don't want to affect on the bond rating.
Not positive or negative, just neutral.
It should have, if anything, will have positive, if we repay it in a timely fashion, it should have a positive effect on our bond rating.
Okay.
Because we borrowed and we paid on a timely fashion.
And the interest that we're going to accrue that would be additional is still less than the 20?
It's still less than the 20,000, any interest that they would charge, because the 20,000 is an additional fee. They're still gonna charge us the interest, and so they're still gonna make interest on the note. The 20,000 is a fee to put the deal together versus that. So we're gonna save the 20,000 to put the deal together.
Thank you.
So,
Is that anything like I have to be bonded sometimes for state work? And they tell me it's like, if you don't complete it, you die, you go bankrupt. That amount of bond will help us pay another company to come finish what you started.
Now, we have that kind of bonding on our projects also, that if our contractors, whatever happened, that this bond is just, it's just an issuance of debt that we're selling off. So it's a different kind of bonding than what
Do we get that 20,000 back like if we pay it in time? Or we
No,
never
we
get
just
that?
don't pay it. We just don't pay the 20,000 to the bonding company.
You mean if we went with the bond, we don't get it?
No, I would know, but if you do, if you did go with bonding company, do you ever get that back?
No, it's part of the,
For the cost of
just
borrowing.
fees.
Mr. Carroll.
All right, so in the past, when we've done the short-term borrowing, we've kind of gone out for bids to see who would give us the best deal. How do we select which bank is gonna?
I think later today, you guys are gonna hopefully gives a nod to take that out to bid. And I was gonna take the 3 local banks. I was gonna take it to Royal, Richland County Bank, and Community First.
So that'll be on our agenda later.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry, it should be on your agenda, but then I'll take it out to those 3 bids, and then the lowest bid automatically gets it. But those are 3 local lenders that are in town, in this county, do business here.
Okay.
I've talked to them all of them want to do business for the county.
Okay, so next. So preliminary budget review. So if you look at this slide, you can just see where all of the numbers are at. So in what we have in taxes, intergovernmental, regulation and compliance, public charges for service, general revenues, commercial revenues, highway, And then our tax levy, which comes up with our total of $42,574,103. So-
You know, but I was just gonna tell them, just so you know, that tax levy there, that 10 million does include a debt of about debt levy about $3.3 million. So our actual net levy is only about 6.7.
And we'll clarify that further down in the presentation.
As we move further in this process, especially for those of us like myself who have not been on this committee before, is there a way to like see comparison to previous years? I mean, I'm sure I could. I'll let them in there.
Yeah, we have last year's budget presentation too.
Okay.
So then the next slide is the revenue type summary. So, because this is really important so that you understand what revenue types you're looking at. And so taxes, which are county sales tax, interest on taxes, MFL and forest crop, tax levy, which is the funding gap between revenues and expenses, intergovernmental is state aid, regulation and compliance, fines, forfeitures, various fees, permits, large groups, etc. Public charges for service, which is departmental fees charged within the county, HHS, Pine Valley Sheriff, that fee schedule that we're working on. That's all of the fees that we as a county can charge. Other general revenues, various non-department fees. Commercial revenues, investment income, general fund, judgment, circuit court, etc. Highway, GTA operational, town bridge, 50/50 cost shares, wheelage tax, and state maintenance agreements. Those are all revenues that we as a county bring in. So the next slide is a giant pie graph of where we get all of those various revenues and how much they are. So you can see our largest chunk is public charges for service. $16 million. Okay. So next is the 2025 preliminary budgeted expenses. And it's very important to note that what you see here, things are combined. This isn't just one department. So general government is multiple departments. So public safety is the sheriff's office. Health and social services is not just HHS. It also has Pine Valley in that number. Transportation, highway, culture, public area, special education, natural resources, county planning, county development, debt service, and our capital projects. So that total, again, is $42,574,103. So you'll see those two numbers match, the expenses and the revenues match. So, and again, here is those expenses, and I won't read all of these, but it shows exactly what is contained in each of those expense types. So you can look back at that prior listing and you know exactly what is contained in each of those headings. So then when you look at this slide, you can see that the largest portion of the expenses is health and social services. And again, Pine Valley operations are in with that one. Because in reality, HHS takes up about $900,000 of the levy. That's it. So the other piece of that is really truly operational expenses. And so you'll see where that is at.
But this number is budget, it's not just levy, correct?
Correct. This is budget. Yeah. So the next slide, our debt service summary. So we get asked about this a lot. So this is the total debt that the county has at this time. And so you will see that we have a couple of small debt consolidation and one capital improvement project loan. So the $245,000 will mature in March of 25. That one will be paid off. The debt consolidation of $1 million will be in 27. That will be paid off. The capital improvement project of $1.8 million will be paid off in 28. And then the two Pine Valley notes of 7.9 million and 7 million roughly will not mature and be paid off until 35 and 36. And then the radio tower, we will start fully paying on, and that doesn't mature until 38, and that's that $8 million project that we are currently in. So you will see then on the right, this is the principal and interest. This is the payment that is required annually. So those general bonds, 937,000, the Pine Valley bonds, 1.479, the radio tower, 321,063, and then that short-term borrowing note this year is 613,700 for a total of 3,351,488, which is that number that Larry just highlighted for you. So that is the total debt annually that the county has to pay.
Could someone remind me where we are with our cap on how much?
Our borrowing capacity is 69 million, correct, Derek?
Yeah, or yeah, around
Around.
6970. Yeah.
Yes. Our borrowing capacity is there.
And remember our rating just increased with the Moody increase last year. Some of you probably remember that. So our bond rating went up last year, which is also great.
Which is very good. All right, so when you look at our gross levy then, where is our spending? That's really usually the big question, because that's what people want to know. So our top spending is in the sheriff's office. $4 million of our $6 million levy are spent there. Our debt service is $3 million. Highway, 1.663500. That number has been the same for, I don't even know how many years.
A while.
A while. They remain pretty consistent. Institutional costs, 1.385. Health and Human Services did see a slight increase this year because we lost a lot of the funding for COVID. A lot of the COVID money that was flowing, that was helping offset some of our public health operations, is gone. And so that had to be supplanted with, obviously, debt levy. And so that's where that went. The one thing that I think is really important to highlight in this budget this year is that whole conversation that we had about Pine Valley. We have agreed, Angela, Larry, and I sat down and we looked at operations, and pending approval of this board, we are all comfortable in recommending that Pine Valley from this point forward contribute $750,000 towards the debt levy annually. And that if revenues exceed expenditures annually as well, we will look at that then at the end of each year and put a percentage of that also towards that debt levy. Because we can't continue to stockpile money in those accounts. It doesn't look good financially. The auditors, it'll start raising red flags. It's not something we should be doing. And this is a more cost-effective, productive way to spend those dollars. And it will then free up those levy dollars, those taxpayer dollars, for the county to start tackling some of these other problems that we have to tackle, that we all know we have to tackle. And free up those dollars. And so that is the proposal in this year's budget, is that we start that going forward.
I don't know that they were passed by us, but Pine Valley's audits in the past, was this not flagged? Do we know?
I don't think that none of this it was an operational type of thing. No, there was no notification that I've seen. I've looked through the last, I'll say 3 years of audits. There was no acknowledgement of any of that, in any of the audits, any of the correspondence. I don't think they picked it up, to be honest with you. I think it was more of a management issue than it was an audit issue. I think the numbers spoke, were true numbers, that they actually, spent that much money, and that they may have been overstaffed, but they didn't, the audit didn't preclude that.
Yep. And again, I don't necessarily think this is any blame. This is just really buckling down and looking at efficiency. And as we're doing this department by department, really taking a peek at how can we maximize our dollars And how can we be more responsible and make sure that we're operating the way that we can and really stretching our dollars to the best of our ability. This is one way we can do that and be as absolutely responsible with our taxpayer dollars as we can. You know, that's a promise that we made, is to be transparent and to do all that we can to try to fix the cliff, as everyone said, in 2027. Well, we're working towards that, and we're doing better. And this is another way that we can improve that. And, you know, the partnership that we have now with Angela is wonderful, because we can sit down and we can talk through these issues, and we can really analyze the numbers and see where we're going and what we need to do. And it's outstanding. We're a true team. And it's amazing. So any other questions on this budget proposal at this point?
Mr. Kevin?
Oh, I'm sorry. And preliminary net levy. Sorry, we have one more slide. I forgot about this one. So if you look at this, you know, our actual levy, then you take away the debt service, you take away all of that, and our net levy is $6,717,452. And so this slide illustrates exactly where every single dollar of that is going for this year. So it's outlined very, very clearly exactly what is being spent in which departments. So we met with every single department, some more than once, line by line. We went through and talked through everything, whether it was, you know, office supplies, gear, you know, tech needs, whatever it was, and talked about where we were doing well, where we thought we could cut back, where we looked at the last 2 years of expenditures, year-to-date expenditures, to try to see if we were overspending, underspending, if we needed to adjust, if we thought everything was good. So a lot of information was looked at, and this was all done very collaboratively, because you cannot set a budget for someone else. They need to come in, they need to have a say, they need to be able to communicate with us and tell us what's important to them and what's working for them and what isn't. And so that's how we approach this budget process. So Derek, Larry, and I met with every department head. Yes.
So how did it go down by like $4 million? Is that because of the increase in shared revenue?
No, the levy went down because we got less money.
So 2023,
Yeah, what was
2024. What am I looking at it wrong?
This is the 2023, right?
24, 10.8.
Yeah, that's a gross levy?
That's gross
That-
and net.
That's got your debt levy in it.
Okay,
That's why it's kind of confusing. A gross levy is, our net levy is the levy that they allow us. That's the allowed levy. And
okay.
then on top of that sits the debt levy.
So has it changed much then?
Yeah, our allowable levy went down this year.
It was
Because our
up by
net,
$39,000. So the levy, the first page of the levy limit worksheet on line number 10 tells you what your levy is gonna be. So when we start the budget, typically we just let it be the same as it was the year before, because sometimes it can go up, like years it's gone up like 30, 40, 50, 60, $70,000, and then some years it goes down. So this year, that core levy reduced from the 6,756 to 6,717, so about $39,000. It went down this year for the core levy, which is, you know, separate from the debt service one. So if you're looking at the levy.
Yeah, which it doesn't say the net levy on.
Right, so, I know some of you are used to seeing the budget worksheet that is like the big Excel monster document that's scary and gives us all nightmares. But that will tell you on there. So remember last year, the net levy was like 10,808. But then we had that $321,988 for the debt service proceeds, reduced that down to 10,462.3. So the overall levy, if you look at the one last year and this year, isn't that much different. We just received 39,000 less in funding from the levy limit for this book.
and that was,
Yeah.
that's attributed to our net new construction.
Right.
So last year, our net new
Oh.
construction was 0.095, this year it's 0.75. So that is why that went down. Now, we don't have the official shared revenue number yet. They're projecting that our shared revenue would be up 2%, but again, we're all kind of fiscally conservative. We don't want to start with a high budget number and then have it come in lower. We're gonna keep things status quo, and if they come in higher, great, and if they don't, then we're not hurting. And so that's where we start. So that's kind of where this is at, and these are the numbers that you're seeing here right now, okay? And that's the recommendation. Now, there's another piece of this that is up for discussion and that needs to be decided by this board. And that is, Derek, do you have those other two slides?
Other two, which one?
The sheriff.
Yes, yep. I,
So the sheriff is requesting an additional deputy. He is requesting a deputy, that he could utilize in court security and then also to supplement, additional calls and different things like that. So the budget as presented does not have that deputy position in it. We did meet with public safety. We did discuss this. They asked us to pull together some additional costs. So Clay, why don't you go ahead and speak to your request, and then I can speak to the financial pieces of it.
Thank you. What we've run into is we've kind of run into an issue, as of lately, and it's been an upcoming issue, right? I've seen this on the horizon. I've been thinking a lot on it in the last couple of years, but we've been struggling to cover court with part-time staff. It's currently how we do it. Well, I shouldn't even say that anymore, really. That's partly how we do it now, because we can't do it with part-time staff. What we've been doing is pulling full-time staff off of the road to help cover court. In addition to that, when times are tough, and they have been lately, we've been pulling our investigator out and putting them in the courtroom, and we've even been pulling our administrative staff from their normal duties and putting them in the courtroom. So I don't think this is a problem that's going to go away. The pool of people who want to come back and work in law enforcement and do court part-time it's getting thinner and thinner. So the primary purpose of this position, as Candace indicated, is really to cover court. Right now, the way our schedule is structured, we have 2 rotations of deputies. One rotation is lopsided by 1 deputy. So this extra deputy would even out our 2 rotations. The plan would be that would allow us on a perfect schedule, nobody's sick, nobody's on vacation, that we would have 4 people on day shift, Monday through Sunday, full week. Monday through Friday, 1 of those 4 people would be assigned to the courts. Saturday and Sunday, they would be an extra body to help cover calls on the road. So with that model in mind, we took a look at our budget. We took a look at our overtime lines, our court security lines, and our transport lines. We were able to make significant reductions in those lines with the understanding that we're going to have staff to reduce those costs. So we'll be able to, transports is something we typically cover part-time staff, or used to typically cover with part-time staff. And a lot of times lately, it either costs us overtime or we're taking a deputy off the road to do it. Kind of similar to our court problem. In addition to struggling to cover court, we're doing more transports now than we have. One of the reasons for this is because defendants can ask to be seen in person. That takes your Zoom option away. We always thought Zoom was going to be the way of the future. It was going to solve all of our problems. Defendants are not wanting to appear by Zoom. They want to appear by person, and they have the right to do so. So we're driving them all over the state. An example of this would be if we have somebody on an emergency detention in Winnebago, they want to appear in person for their hearing. We have to go to Winnebago, bring them back here for court, even though we very well know they're not getting out, they're going right back to Winnebago that day. So Now, that's one example, but that's what we've been seeing happening. In addition to court and transports, again, a part of this position is going to be covering patrol. A small part, but 2 days a week is still significant. Historically, I mean, this isn't the first year I've asked for this position. It's the first year I've asked for a primary court coverage position. Our call volumes, so we had this position back in 2009. In 2010, it was defunded. Comparing now to then, we're up 20. So the number I've been touting the last 2 years was 20% increase in call volume. That's yearly calls, and that was comparing 2010 to 2019. So bumping it up, going 2019 to 2023, we're up an additional 11% in call volume. So these weekends, right? I said Saturday and Sunday, this person's going to be available. Or extra person will be available. Friday through Sunday is our highest call volume days of the week. So historically, I just ran last year, but that's a historical truth. So that person will be there to provide us additional coverage on the weekend. Transports, emergency detentions happen on the weekend, stuff like that. We'll have that extra person to help do that instead of either overtiming it or calling in additional part-time staff to do it. I can keep going with stats. Our OWIs are up 44% from 2010. Our drug investigations are up 69%. Our personal injury crashes are up 22%. The need is there for patrol as well. Again, primary function, when what we really need and where we're struggling right now too is court. We need the court security. So I just figured out a way where we could probably get the best of both worlds by adding it as a patrol deputy position and not just strictly court security position. Does anybody have any questions about anything I've talked about?
Clay, have you kind of figured out roughly if you don't have this part-time help and time and a half, kind of what the difference would be if you had a full-time officer?
So I guess the budget as presented in the presentation right now, of course, it does not have that position in it. And so there's increased overtime court security costs and transport costs, like I said, involved in that. What it's going to be, I think what the burden is going to be is if we don't have it, is we're going to fall behind on our call taking ability. So, because we're going to be pulling courts, we're going to be pulling, again, investigative staff, patrol staff off of their normal duties and putting them in the courtroom. Or we're going to be sending them on transports. So as an example, this week, I have my investigator, one of my lieutenants, and even my chief deputy taking transports this week. So, I mean, we're pulling staff away from the jobs they should be doing and having them cover transports.
Well, I guess that's kind of my question. There must be, if we hire this person, there, we should save on the overtime.
We are.
Right. So have you kind of figured out about what the difference would be versus not doing the overtime?
Yeah, and that's worked into the budget.
That other slide has with 818 in it.
Yeah.
Hold on.
So right now, the difference between the two budgets that I've presented is, I don't know the exact dollar amount, 36,378.
But, okay, now here's where I have to jump in, because I've been asked to get other data. So I did get the data that public safety asked me to provide. Larry dug in and talked to Amber and got some other, because with that, you know, there's benefit cost, you know, potential insurance cost. Did you figure that in there
So
with that?
wages, benefits, insurance is all figured in.
It's all figured in, okay.
What we missed was there was some equipment costs and uniform allowance and stuff like that.
So, and then a squad, which initially they will keep an old squad over, but eventually that will mean another new squad in the rotation. So we were asked to get those additional costs, and when you add all of that on there, that's another about $89,500.
Is that annually or like,
No.
because the squad car would be a one?
It's not annually. Well, the squad is every so many years. Yeah. Yeah.
Every 6 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
but that position costs $89,000.
No, more than that. probably.
no, well, yeah, the position itself,
That's
the
what we need.
wage.
What's the position cost?
right,
And how are you gonna offset it? Because that 89 is not going away.
no,
It's
So-
gonna go up every year because it raises and everything else.
right, the wage.
Yeah,
So your budget's gonna go up every year by adding a person, which that's what it is. I mean,
Right.
that's what you need to know. So what's the cost of the position? What's it cost?
roughly 100,000. I don't know the exact dollar amount, but
Yeah.
roughly.
So then take away what we paying casual transports and court officers and there you
Which-
go. That's your difference.
Which that is, you know, what was taken away and what was reduced was, and then taking out another expenditure was about $56,000 off the top is what was in the spreadsheet.
About half of it is what
So
we,
then it'd be like 50,000 instead of the 36,000?
Right.
You're saying?
Yeah, about.
Mr. Carroll,
So it sounds like the way you're assigning the roles, there's no repercussions for the union agreement?
I guess I'm not quite tracking you, but it would be a union position.
Right. But
Yeah.
there's no need to change any of the,
No,
okay.
no. No, they would, and I'm not creating a new job classification
That's
for
what
it.
Right.
It would just be an assignment.
Okay.
Yep.
So my question would be, you get 12-hour rotation, so one from each 12-hour rotation is gonna do this?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, yeah, so the way the schedule works, to break it down a little bit, is they work 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 3 off. So whatever shift is on day shift, you know, you'll have somebody working,
One from each
yeah,
shift.
one from each shift.
Yeah, 5 days.
Yes, yeah, one from each shift is going to cover court.
and if there's no court, then they're available for everything
Yeah,
else.
they're available for calls, they're available to do civil process, whatever other jobs need. I mean, maybe there is something going on in the building they still need to be here for, but they're available for it. Yep.
And I guess the only other part of the discussion, I think that was a little bit concerning or that was brought into the discussion with public safety is just that the overall, you know, you look at the levy cost and you look at how we fund departments and I mean, the sheriff knows this, we've been very transparent about this discussion. The sheriff's office is about 59% of our levy. And we have other departments that have needs and we have a very limited pool of money. And so at some point, you know, those things are going to have to be considered. And I'm not saying this isn't an important position and it's not a need, because it is. But then at some point, you know, where is it going to get to that point where it's a tipping point where that budget is the entire levy? If we don't, you know, think through how we're making these decisions and where we're going with this. So, you know, and Clay and I had this discussion. I said, every dollar we spend in your department is a dollar we don't spend somewhere else. And that's why I need to have all this information and we need to be really realistic and transparent when we're presenting this to you all. Because court security is a big hot button issue right now. And it's honestly, we continue to have some really scary things happening here. We do.
Again, today as well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's a no-win because money is tight. But, you know, that's just the full picture. So we've presented it the whole way around. And it really is a decision for you as a board to make.
And I guess if I,
Yeah.
to another thing too, and if, whether we're all aware of this in the room or not, it is a statutory function of the office of sheriff.
Yep.
So, it's a requirement.
And a recommendation of the Supreme Court of the state of Wisconsin.
Yes, yeah, so. And looking, I sat down with Candace and did look at, you know, the chunk I am of the levy and it's something that I'm reminded of every so often, and not lost on me. I will also say though, like comparatively, looking at my comparables, at least the ones I have access to today, I do run still a pretty lean budget when you look at dollars. versus percentage. It's just again, another way to look at it. But looking at some of my comparables, I run a pretty lean budget. So
So what do you want from us? A direction?
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, this budget is gonna go before the board, and realistically, it's for you to adopt or not. It's also for you to make recommendations on changes, suggestions on changes, and that is really for you to decide. If you want to direct me to proceed with the budget with 818 in the budget, I will do so. If you prefer to leave it with the choice and take it to board that way, I will do so. I am at your direction.
Ingrid?
So the budget that you presented did include this or
Did not. Did not. I told the sheriff I would present it without it in and then give that side-by-side comparison, and that's what these two sheets have. If you look at those two sheets, you will see the differential in the numbers. And at the end of the day, the bottom line of the levy, that difference is that 36,378. But then public safety again did ask me, oh, well, what about this? What about this? I determined those additional costs, and that's what I verbalized to you.
And that's what I don't know if you were in the room, Ingrid, but roughly 100,000, but 50,000 in savings from overtime. So balance is roughly around 50,000, but. What's your thoughts, committee? For an hour in already?
My thoughts are is that if there's any duty of this board, it's public safety. Nobody wants to see the budget go or the levy go up or anything like that. It is obviously a problem that's not going to go away. So I don't know how we cannot act on it.
I would say just take it to the full board.
I
We can
think
present it both ways, but
present it to the full board.
it doesn't make no difference to me. It's needed. We've talked about courthouse security for how many years, Mr. Cooley?
We've been on.
Yeah.
That squad car, well, a lot of squad cars. in
Yeah.
6 years too, so. I agree with Gary, I would agree to see it, so. Just take it both. I mean, I can support it, I don't have a problem with it, but I think the whole board needs to make that.
Would you prefer to see it a different way?
I would prefer to see it the cleanest way that you can present it, so that, what does my boss say, so that a 10th grader can understand. If you do it that way, then everybody should be good.
Okay,
And
we can,
if you're gonna include these sheets, can they be flipped? Because on
Ones
here.
are like
but
that.
They're on the side and I have a really hard time.
Another good reason. to do it.
I've been like.
Laptop. Yeah, and
Well, we can do a spreadsheet. We can do it differently.
Yeah, I'll second.
What was your motion, Mr. Manning? I just, to take a vote forward?
Make it more than the
your motion, Mr. Manning, is to take them both to full county board, next county board meeting, as presented tonight with a few changes. Any further discussion? Anybody else with more comments?
I would just include the extra person in it rather than not have them in it. We can always take it out.
We can do that.
Well, that's not what the motion is.
No, that's the discussion.
Okay. Mr. Turk, thoughts?
Support taking both options to the board and see which one we select. It's not a matter of, if it's not important, it is important, then we just gotta figure out, okay, so if we shift that money there, what are we taking away from? So.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Carroll?
Another question, no.
Oh. Ingrid, you're good with it? We're good with taking it as presented, Mr. Gill, okay. Put it out to the full board as presented with a few changes, putting in those other dollar amounts, so. All right, so all those in favor of forwarding this on as presented tonight with a few changes, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Your question, Mr. Carroll.
The ARPA money, I assume, I mean, I know there's deadlines on when that has to be spent. Is that all gonna be tossed into the pot at some point, or is ready left?
Oh, yeah, there's plenty of ARPA money left.
But there are deadlines, that's why I was wondering.
Correct. There are deadlines. We gave a report on that not too long ago.
Just, it's like that's good.
Plus, yeah,
We just gave one.
we just gave a report on the ARPA dollars because when we brought it when we had Tyler approved. Because we said we were going to use Tyler dollars to do Tyler, but we can bring another one. But no ARPA dollars were used to do any of this.
That was my question.
Yeah, no ARPA dollars were utilized to balance the budget at all.
That was in the first slide, I believe.
And, you know, in this model and in this budget, there's $300,000+ going into capital planning again, and $30,000 again going into economic development. So we're continuing building. So that is, you know, moving forward, not having to borrow, doing the right thing here.
And I have one other
all
question
built in.
on the budget itself.
Mhm.
Any big changes, plus or minus, as far as the campus not operating anymore? Does that help us or hurt us?
It's like I say, it's like
staying the same.
There's $80,000.
You just left $80,000 in there. I mean, you know, the utilities are not fun. So that will be a decision that the campus reconfiguration committee is going to need to take a hard look at because the utilities are extremely expensive, monthly.
It would heat up that 80,000.
In
More.
probably 6 months, less than 6 months.
And I know it's gonna be very difficult to shut the lights off per se out there, but there's gotta be something we can do about all the costs.
Well, and again, that's where the campus reconfiguration committee will have to have those discussions and make some decisions, I think.
That's a good question though. So it's not including if we have to maintain that building.
We
for
have
the
ARPA
entire-
dollars set aside for that
Oh.
specific purpose. Those were allocated a long time ago.
Okay, I did not recall that, so that's good information.
Yeah, we have some ARPA dollars set aside.
Okay, and how long will that last though?
Not very long as that cost.
No.
And again, that's just like taking money and doing this,
Right.
so.
Good question. All right, moving to health
So
insurance.
no other suggestions on the budget though. Everybody's happy with it other than that. Just for our clarity. Okay. Okay. So, yes. Next item that you have was just given to us today. This is just a really brief update. I just asked you to take a peek and look at this. This is called an ICRA plan. As you know, we are looking into options for healthcare because the state plan continues to get more and more expensive. And some of my counterparts in neighboring counties saw a 40% increase this year. And I am very fearful that we will be in their shoes next year. Iowa County, I met with their administrator, their increase was $800,000+ this year, and they cannot sustain it. So he said, Candace, can we meet? Because you're good at this, and I'm kind of wondering what we're gonna do. And so I engaged a couple of different consultants. So we met as a management administration staff and met with 2 different vendors. One we will meet with later this week to get their proposal. We met with the other today. And so this is the outcome of that meeting. It is called an ICRA plan. It is something that is new. We are planning to have a focus group of department heads and employees meet with them next week. And so there will be more to follow, but this is a really innovative new way to provide health insurance to employees to make dollars go further and honestly give them a lot more choice in plans and give them more money in their pockets. So it's really exciting, really outstanding, and we'll go a little more in depth on it later on, but I just wanted to provide you with this packet. Give you some time to kind of look at it and do some research. And then after the focus group happens, if it's looking really positive, then we will have some in-depth discussion and a presentation.
Acronyms drive me nuts. What is it for state?
Individual coverage health reimbursement arrangement. basically it gets us out of a one-size-fits-all plan, but it also gets us out of the state healthcare plan. Gives our employees choice. They work with an enroller. They get a plan that is workable for their family, their situation, their prescription needs. It's based on region, and it looks like it's really an outstanding option for us. It's pretty much cutting edge. So really exciting option, and it gives us an opportunity to control our healthcare costs. Because you don't see those giant increases, those giant percentages. So. Again, just a preview for you.
You good? Questions on what she presented so far? All right, if not, let's go to number 8. Discussion and possible action, designation of the Executive and Finance Standing Committee as the Planning Commission. Plan Commission, planning or plan?
Okay, so as all of you know, we are in the process of updating our comprehensive plan. And so Southwest Regional Planning Commission has asked us to designate the this committee as the oversight committee for the comprehensive plan. So 2 resolutions or these 2 recommendations are at their behest. So that's why they are before you.
So you just need a motion saying so.
Yep.
Treasurer Cooley, Treasurer Manning, discussion on the first one, designating this committee as the Plan Commission. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, then we would entertain a motion as well for recommend approval of the public participation plan for the Richland County Comprehensive Plan. That is just allowing.
Just approving that all the different various meetings that we're going to hold and all of that, because then what will happen is those meetings will be had, they'll collect the data, they'll get some preliminary stuff, they'll bring it here, you guys will look at it, make any suggestions, review it, give the primary, blessing, and then recommend it to the county board for full and final approval.
In order to approve this, they've already been having meetings.
No, once they get the data, the new product.
So we're not approving the public participation plan, we're.
The public participation.
Yeah, I know they're already having meetings, but they want this.
They
Yeah.
presented it last time.
I
thought
know, we didn't understand it either, but they want it.
All right.
Mr. Cooley, second by Glassbrenner, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, nobody opposed, moving to item number 10. Discussion and possible action on approval of contract with Abbott and Swain Law for corporate counsel services. Item number 10.
Okay, so we've had this discussion, on the cost of corporation counsel services. You've seen those numbers. We do have, the cost of an employee, for corporation counsel built into the budget. There is enough money there. I know Mr. Cooey had expressed concern about that based on the wage implementation. We have the number now for the wage implementation. That is also built into the budget. We also have information from DA Harper that she has requested from the state, that additional, basically 8-hour position that is currently being filled by Amy Forehand be allocated as a ADA position. So, and should that happen, that is not likely to be approved and instituted until, I believe she said 2025. Fall of 2025, if I'm correct. Am I remembering that correctly? But, so that position may actually be going away one way or another, just based on the fact that they do, rate another position based on the caseload now. Currently, our DA's office does not rate an additional full-time support attorney, ADA, where now, based on the new allocation and caseload, it does. So she has requested from the state then to have that position elevated to a full-time ADA position. So she will not know the outcome of that until later. But at any rate, you know, you saw the costs, you saw the numbers previously as to what in-house corporation counsel would cost us annually. Billing at $150 per hour, the cost would roughly be very, very similar to having an in-house corporation counsel. So again, it's board's decision. The contract is in front of you. It's yours to decide.
Any thoughts?
Well, my thing is the hours. Up. Because I mean, a full-time position is 2,000 hours, 2,080. I haven't seen yet that we use 2,080 hours. That's where I struggle with that.
Well,
And I'm not, and the other thing I'm gonna say is we need to look over the past 3 to 5 years, because the campus won't be a problem for much longer. At least not to the level that it probably was last year. So I struggle with that, so I'm for this agreement. Until we get, I gotta see it, I'm not comfortable with it. So I hope that, I make a motion that we do this contract.
One note, I left the term blank, so the motion would need to include how long you intend on.
I would say for no more than a year, and then we can reassess.
Good.
Second.
Seconded by, who seconded?
Carol,
Steve Carroll, discussion, go ahead.
I remember looking at those numbers, but I don't see them in a packet. Were they just handed out, or did you have them in a packet?
no, I think we just discussed them.
There
So,
was a handout.
yeah, there was a handout. There was a handout.
Budgeted about 163 for the budget for corporate council.
And that's between the two, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to our discussion and I don't think I have the handout with me.
So currently, year to date, as of 8/12/24, we had used, between the two, 713.86 hours. And so doubling that, I'm sorry, no, we estimated 1,298 hours based on the two, what we had used year to date. So annually, and that 1,200 hours annually was going to cost us at the old rate, $115,403. So that was just for the used hours of about 1,200 hours. A full-time position was going to cost us an annual wage of $109,000. And then if they took full family insurance, was going to cost us $135,000 for a full-time. And so that's where the hangup really was you're going to get full-time hours for the same level of money. So what I did now, I went back and I calculated that same, same level of hours. So at 356.93 hours, which was the year-to-date hours that we had at that time, at $150 an hour, we were looking at 53,539.5 hours. So you double that to that 713.86 hours, and you were at that $105,000 mark already for
Right.
700 hours.
But that was still less than the 135,000. And I think the question that we had at the discussion was, yes, we are saying that we could utilize him more, that there is more work. But that's difficult to determine until you would do it, and you're having those extra hours where we are then paying that extra 30,000, which lead to your point,
Right.
so. That's really.
Well, what I can tell you is we're not using attorneys less.
Right.
You know, and what Sheriff Porter said, that their call volume, which also relates back to the issues here within the county, and us on the board. But Mr. Carroll,
I guess my thought is that I can't tell if this was an anomalous phase or if it's a new normal. I just assume give it another year.
yeah, I'm good with that. Let's, anybody else want to discuss it? We got a lot more to go through yet tonight. If not, all those in favor of extending, what do you want for a time frame, Mr. Wendell, on that? Start date and end date,
So
roughly?
the current rates go through the end of the year. So the agreement would be effective upon signing. But if we want to do just a calendar year, or we could do 1 year from the date of signing. So effective tomorrow, 1 year from tomorrow.
I think that gives us a budget. Well, how's that gonna do for our budget though? Because if we say we did that, say we went another year and then we decide, okay, we're not gonna have budget month, well, we do right now because it's in the budget.
You want to go to July?
Well, what I'm saying is, well, how does it match up with the budget? You know what I mean? Because you'd want him to start, or whoever to start
How about,
full-time with
Well,
the
it goes
budget.
through December then, because we're gonna wanna have time.
You know
to
what I
look at
mean?
that.
You're gonna, I don't know how you wanna do that.
I would say April. April to April would be a good.
Oh, this,
If you just want a 12-month look
isn't
back,
our contract already, how does that?
well, it doesn't matter. I mean,
There's no violation if the contract ended sooner, is there? So,
No, actually.
say we go from, you know what I mean?
if there's a 30-day notice in there.
There's not.
if There's not?
Nope.
It's just whenever.
It's,
we-
parties make reasonable efforts to provide as much notice as possible.
Okay,
Okay,
okay.
We have
Okay.
certain obligations.
yeah.
Yeah, then I think we're fine, as long as we can make a reasonable accommodation, so we can evaluate,
That,
at
yeah,
which time the board sees fit to evaluate, and then give notice dependent on what you think is necessary.
So the current rate stays through December 31st, and the new rate starts January 1.
What is the new rate?
so then the
One-
contract, okay, because my point was then, we would wanna factor this into our next year's budget discussion if we were considering adding on full-time.
12/31 or something.
That's why I was thinking that,
That coordinates with the budget cycle.
exactly, so would it, okay. That would be my thought then, for that date.
Either way, we're gonna figure it into the
Yeah,
budget. It
but
doesn't
there's
really
no,
matter.
it doesn't, yeah.
Yeah. We'll figure it in either way.
Whichever date.
That doesn't-
Yeah, you guys, we'll let you guys work that out.
Yep.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of approving and going into a contract for 1 year with Abbott and Swain, with the new rates that will take effect January 1st, 2025, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right. And we'll move up to full county board. Number 11. Discussion and possible action, approval of change order for the radio tower project. Number 11. Ms. Barr.
So you've actually seen a different version of this change order. And it came about in an odd way. The change order that I thought we were receiving was for $2,500 to add a bird study. That was cool, no big deal. We had to do the bird study, made sense. I got the bill and it was higher than $2,500. It was 24,000 and something. And so I didn't realize it, because I'm gonna be honest, I assumed it was 2,500. I sent it to Candace, she's like, I can't sign this. We have to take this to board. Oh, well, so I called back and we have a long description about this. What happened is the vendor didn't realize he needed to be sending me monthly change orders. We expect change orders during this process. I'm gonna tell you, there will be one larger than this coming. there will be 2 more change orders I'm aware of. The next one is probably 30,000, the one after that's 20,000. The reason being, we had a tower in Yuba that we were pretty set on using, and I think we're gonna have to make a change. We have put $22,000 worth of work into that will have to be repeated at another location. And there is then, because we're going to change locations, we have to and I just got this after, it was after 5 o'clock, reshoot the microwaves, which will be another 22,000. So I went through this with Edge and with Mike Day, and we reviewed all of the changes that he was proposing here. We did decline some of the changes, and now this change order is down to 19,300. The reason being, again, if we start at the top, in Richland Center, we took out a final inspection. We are doing tower climbs on some of the towers. It's not necessary on all of them if they're identical in height and in, so we're setting the microwaves and the antennas. Mike feels comfortable with that. It makes a significant difference in cost. So we took out the final no tower climb there. And also that was we weren't gonna get a final tower climb this year. It'll be too windy, cold and icy to do it. Muscadet, we took out field inspection data collection. We also won't need some of the civil work. We took out utility coordination because there's no change in utilities at Muscadet. We're keeping the same site. That reduced us a little bit there. Gotham, we took out, again, the tower climb, but we had to add a power walk in because Alliant Energy has to come and do the power review because it's a new site and they'll be adding power in there. Other change orders, Westport, they took out tower inventory because structural analysis wasn't complete. They took out structural analysis because we're going to build a new tower. We're not reusing the one that's there. There was additional services we had to do with FAA, NEPA, archaeological and geo, just to get the towers built. And then the bird survey, the famous bird survey that we had to do. Started this. We also had to do the new tower submittal analysis when we discovered we had to build our own tower there. Yuba, this is the one we changed scope once in Yuba and moved the tower to a different place and discussed having a taller tower. And with that, there were changes in the scope. Bunker, again, they did not do the tower inventory. We're going to build a new tower at Bunker. So it's the same changes that we had at Westport. Keysville, we're not going to do the tower climb, same reason, but we will have to bring power in with Alliance. We had to add that. Boaz, we are taking out the final tower climb, and Viola was the power walk and the tower climb. Most of these are the same. This is where the last ones are with Yuba and Boaz. We were swapping sites frequently. They did a lot of work for us, but we were able to get some of the cancellations done and save ourselves some money. So now the change order is at 19,000. The work was indeed done, and I just need approval on that. It's in the contingency fund. The contingency fund is still healthy, even with the change orders expected. We're not over budget.
Yeah.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Period.
Hopefully I'm wrong. So it looks like they use a cookie cutter, this tower, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, so.
Exactly. And so once I delved in, we were
So
able,
then it was up to us to go in and read all this and decline it.
Mike Day helped me through that. I can't say I'm that, I've learned a ton, but Mike knows what to look for and I don't.
My only fear is that they're gonna have to go do them tower climbs next year because some of it. That's my only fear. And you have no way of knowing that. It has nothing. My
Mike's,
fear is that next year, something's not gonna work right. And then we're gonna go back in and, oh, we gotta go do this.
Mike
But
has
it
said
costs us
that
twice as much?
well, and Mike's solution to that was, what you find during that final tower climb is you find loose bolts or something like that. That's why you do the final tower climb. He said that we can come to a written agreement that says in the spring, all of a sudden we find something that's a problem that wasn't done appropriately. We just put it into the contract that they have to honor to correct that.
That's what because it's gonna happen this year.
So we're discussing this before it's on the table. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right.
Sorry.
I'll make a
No.
motion.
The committee meeting.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it. Now we can discuss it.
Okay, thank you. Problem I have, these may well be legitimate changes, I don't know, but we don't have, do we have a contract with Edge?
Yes, it's in
Where's
your,
that?
in the radio tower project folder on your iPads.
Well, the last time I looked, it was not there.
I
We have a contract with GenCom.
Mhm.
We have a contract with the civil contractor.
Edge is your civil contractor.
Sorry,
Edge is your civil. Edge and Finish is your tower builder, but Edge is your civil.
Edge is in the same contract with the civil? Is that
No.
what you're saying?
Edge is your civil contractor.
That's not what the contract says, what's the name of that outfit? Finish,
Finish is your tower builder.
right? That's the only contract the point is, I have not seen a scope of work or a contract with Edge in the folder. And I'm not gonna approve any changes till we have a chance to review that kind of stuff. I know, Candace, you've been trying to round up all of the contract documents, and get them someplace, but I still haven't seen everything.
And
I
also,
can
we're
put
saying
it
that
in
we
there.
would
I've
want,
got it right now.
we would want to change this to include that they are then under contract if they didn't do it correctly, to redo a tower climb to fix it without additional costs, correct?
I think you're gonna get hit with the additional cost because we're not paying it now, no matter what.
Right, we're
They're pulling-
those out.
They're pulling the tower climbs out, which overall, well, what'd you say? It was around 30,000? Now we're down to 20.
19,
Oh, they pulled it, okay.
yeah.
It's gonna cost us 10,000 anyway.
So,
We may not need to do it, you know what I mean? So you're just hoping everything's put together right. At the end of the day.
What happened to buying something and then?
It should be right,
Right? Or take.
Well,
yeah.
$1,000,000 thinking,
Yeah.
not like you're buying a used vehicle.
Mr. Carroll's still looking, which is fine. Good idea. Did you find it?
No, I'm putting it in there in just a
Oh,
second, and then you have to wait for it to sync with the external server.
Mr. Carroll, are you okay with, you can vote no, which I'm okay with. If we approve, everybody else votes and we move it on to full county board?
I'm gonna vote nay.
Yeah, which is fine.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any
Wait
further
a second.
discussion?
I thought you were saying you wanted to amend this. Are you saying you don't want to change anything in this?
the only thing is in their contract that they have with them that,
But we haven't seen this contract.
well, I'm relying on Barb to say there's a contract.
There is, I'll have it as soon as I can get it to sync.
Doesn't matter if we put it off a month.
The bills from July that we haven't paid. So when I mean.
Yeah, but this is the first we've seen it, correct?
No,
No, we've seen this one before. This is the one that was going to come in front of you and I would
Yeah,
sign
I thought
it.
it was.
yes.
Because it's just paying
Well, that's, you took that stuff out, that's why it's gone.
you're paying ongoing progress billing, right?
So were you saying the ad?
Yes, but we haven't authorized this.
gotta try to open spring.
So yeah, without authorization, it may hold up the project. Could possibly.
So what that's gonna
Bring
be,
it back then, so we could actually see that.
I don't, to me, it's.
No, if someone can show me where these
This,
documents
we're
are,
just
I'll look at
paying
what I have.
$10,000. At the end of the day, we're gonna pay the 10,000 someone. That's my, not a fear, probably.
Mr. Turk,
School
comments?
agreement, here we go.
I think in the interest of keeping things moving, we should approve this. We're gonna have more of them coming, it sounds like, so there will be more discussion, more explanation as we get through. We know that there have been some unanticipated things have popped up, unfortunately.
And that usually happens with most construction sites. Any further discussion, group? All right, let's put it to a vote, and if we want to move it on to full county board, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, no, Mr. Carroll. All right, let's move it to full county board, and I'm sure we'll see more. Number 12, discussion and possible action, revision of ethics ordinance and code of conduct. 12. Thanks, Barb. So where are we with this?
So it's kind of expanded from the initial proposal of simply naming this body as the ethics board. I did provide the committee with the Crawford, Sauk, and Iowa County ethics ordinances, as well as the Langley County Code of Conduct section of their rules of the board. The reason I did that is reviewing our ethics ordinance versus the other counties' ethics ordinances. The language is not dissimilar, so I could not figure out what it was that struck me as needing revision. And then I recalled that, as I've said, former Supervisor Murphy Lopez wrote this ordinance. And so when I write an ordinance, I write it as a lawyer. Former Supervisor Murphy Lopez wrote this as a person. So there are sections that are not as intuitive for someone used to reading statutes and ordinances a certain way. And it kind of made it difficult to pull out the issues that warranted further discussion. The first question that or the first note that I would highlight in reviewing this is the Code of Ethics ordinance references standards to which public officials are meant to be held, but then it doesn't define those standards anywhere. And so that's why I included the Langley County Board of Supervisors, their section 16.1, sub 1 through 6. Those are as defined standards of conduct as I would be comfortable seeing written into something meant to govern the behaviors of the others. Specifically subsection number 2, which is the act in the best interests of the county government by refraining from conduct which a reasonable person would deem unethical, offensive, or otherwise contrary to our community values or the oath of office. The incident that prompted this entire discussion, the implementation of the ethics ordinance, was more one of conduct than any ethics violation. So it was not disclosure of privileged or confidential information. It was not someone using their position for financial gain. It was someone behaving in a manner that others on this body felt was conduct unbecoming of a county supervisor. And so that's the first thing that this body would need to revisit. Is this supposed to be a code of conduct, a code of ethics, or a code of ethics that contains a code of conduct? And that last one is important because that is an authority granted to the county board by statute. So you can prescribe, what's the exact language? Ethical standards of conduct and prohibiting conflicts of interest on the part of local officials and other employees of the county or municipality And that's, that trails off on to other municipalities. But ethical standards of conduct is different than a code of ethics. And that's the kind of difference that maybe only a lawyer can love, but it matters to this body's ability to govern itself. If someone were to disclose confidential information, there are just potentially statutory consequences to that. This code is more meant to cover, well, to reinforce the statutory concern. So those conflicts of interest, accepting things of value for actions or not, or inaction, but also to allow this body to clarify to what standards it is going to choose to hold itself. There's no obligation to do so. Again, there's no obligation. We have an ethics ordinance at all. You could decide that, you know what, the people chose us and they knew who they were voting for when they voted, and they're only going to be beholden to the voters, certainly in line with the democratic values. Or you can say, look, we can't operate this county in an efficient manner if all we're doing is hearing complaints about other supervisors or employees. And so we need something to be able to act on when these concerns are brought to us. And so that would be the first question. And then the other question, which again did come up in the last time this was discussed, is the makeup of if there's going to be an ethics board or body, who should be on that. The things that have been floated are this body, again, because it was the spiritual successor of the Rules and Strategic Planning Committee, which served as the ethics board prior. However, 2 out of 3 of the ordinances that I sent you from the other counties do have citizen membership. 3 members, an alternate, at least one of whom is an attorney licensed to practice law. Pros and cons of that. Again, we want to make sure that they were properly trained, especially because they are by definition going to be dealing with some of the most sensitive, confidential topics that would come before the county board. But I personally am opposed to any organization being able to be its own watchdog. And so I certainly understand the advantage for having citizen members. But again, that's a decision that this body will need to make. From there, the hearing process, there's formatting that I would like to do to it, but the actual structure of it, I did come around to. It does conform again with the due process requirements that, you know, if you were looking to remove one of your members, they would be entitled to due process protections there. What the other concern I have was the kind of lack of a clear enforcement mechanism. It does allow for censure, suspension, removal from office, or public or private reprimand. What that isn't really defined aside from removal from office or suspension. So just to make this body aware, you are authorized under statute to prescribe a forfeiture for violations of the ordinance in an amount not exceeding $1,000 for each offense, or you can set a minimum of $100 for each offense as well. I believe Iowa County does choose to have that, and so they can fine their members $100, I think.
So we're looking, Mike, you're looking for direction. We want a code of ethics or code of conduct or both.
Yes.
So in my opinion, a code of conduct would be a good place to start. And then we go from there. And then the next figure out who's gonna oversee it. But I think we need the code of conduct first so that we can improve that, so that we can say, okay, this is what it is. Do we agree with this? And then the next level is to get who's gonna manage it. Oversee it.
Ingrid, go ahead.
So with that, we already have an ethics ordinance So if we were starting with the code of conduct, it would be in addition to,
I think this is where the problem is. The ethic ordinance isn't,
it isn't the code of conduct.
it isn't the code
So
of
in
conduct.
my opinion, it would be kind of adding on to that if we wanted to edit the ethics ordinance after that, but it's in addition to that. It's not replacing.
I would say we need that. We need code of conduct.
Right.
That's what I say we need. The ethics thing, Mike doesn't feel comfortable with the way it is written.
Right.
But the content of it is
The
pretty
content,
similar to these other.
yeah, the substantive content is the same. Our formatting could be improved and there's, it's Frankensteinian. If you look, especially having reviewed the other ones, it's very clear that language from each of these ordinances was taken and placed into this, which is fair because language from one of these ordinances is in one of the other ordinances. So if it's not broke, why fix it? In terms of legal language, so that's a fairly standard practice. It's just the manner in which this is put together. The example would be in either like gifts or financial interest. Those terms are defined in their own sections, which again is apparently something that makes sense to not lawyers. But I recall distinctly having a vigorous discussion about the standard formatting of placing the definition of terms separate from how those terms are applied. Those would all be things that I would take care of on my end in a final presentation. But I did want to confirm that I had reviewed the ordinance and the things that irk me are not necessarily relevant to the discussion that you need to have.
So on my second part of that question then is, if we address the code of conduct, so in the Langlade, or I don't know how to say that.
Langlade?
There's, for enforcement for code of conduct, it appears that it lies with the county board. If we are discussing who is our ethics board, and if the code of conduct is done within the ethics ordinance, and if that ethics board is citizen members, does then that become they're enforcing that code of conduct, or do you just put, I mean, because I can understand the approach of wanting citizen members on an ethics board, but when we're talking about a code of conduct, to me, that sounds like a self-governance type of approach. So then I'm wondering, do you separate those two things out?
So that, yes, the Langlade Code of Conduct is in their rules of the board. It is not in their ethics ordinance. And you bring up a good point because the ethics ordinance applies to all of our employees. Do we necessarily want citizen members coming in and hearing detailed personnel information about an employee who's alleged to have violated the ethics ordinance?
Okay.
So I posed this question to Attorney Andy Phillips, because he designed our new board rules. He did design part of our ethics. And so I thought it was relevant to ask him what his intent was when he was advising us on drafting this whole thing. And he says, his comment was, because of the difficulties asking citizen members not involved with local government to interpret and apply an ethics code can be challenging. If citizen members are included on the local ethics board, there will need to be significant training involved. He said, based upon my experience, the majority of counties do not have citizen members, or if they do, those members are a minority of the board. He said that citizens don't have regular dealings with the, the terminology, the governmental activities, and that, there's some other things in here that he says, but basically they're not as familiar with day-to-day operations and activities, and it's very hard for them to then come into those discussions and weigh in. And then he also cites the concern over confidentiality and having then private citizens having access to personnel data and that sort of information as well. So.
Mr. Kell.
Crawford has a citizen one and advised by an attorney, but have we had some house going?
I have not.
Does that also include the personnel, or is that specifically only the public officials?
Theirs is an ethics ordinance, so I believe it includes their employees as well.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just observing the fact that we're almost 2 hours into this meeting with still many agenda items remaining, I don't think we're in a position to settle this tonight. But the position we are in is we have an existing ethic ordinance in force that says ethics matters go to the ethics board. We do not know what our ethics board is today. I would suggest that in the interim, we follow through on that original resolution we had to designate this committee as the ethics board and fully commit to making revisions to our ordinance, to creating a code of conduct, and to determining what that board should look like moving forward. But in the meantime, at least establish a structure so we do have something in place if an ethical concern should come up.
I can support the.
I'd second it.
Yep, I agree with Mr. Turk as well.
And if we designate ourselves as the ethics board, well, then we're the appropriate committee to be figuring out what the ethics ordinance should look like, and we can take that back to the full board.
And that's gonna be, in my opinion, that's gonna be something other than one of these meetings, just to work on ethics.
We might have to have a special meeting just to
So
deal with
the
it.
ethics
So
is written, what we need to define is who's on if there's a problem, right? And we need a code of conduct if we don't have one, and I think that's something we need to work out.
Oh, yeah.
That's a effort. The code of conduct is what we need to fix, and then.
And if we want to incorporate that in our rules of the board, that should come from this committee then. So
So I would entertain a motion to go back to original do we have to?
whatever that resolution
It was it tabled? What was? Go ahead.
I understand. We're saying though, the code of conduct would most likely be in the rules of the board. That falls under this purview, right? But the ethics, the concern with the ethics, and I'm not arguing one way or the other here. I'm just saying the concern and why we didn't pass that the last time was this whole citizen membership thing. This has nothing to do with the code of conduct
No,
necessarily.
and
Even
what
if
I'm
we set up a special ethics committee that had citizen members, they wouldn't have to deal with the code of conduct.
True.
So what are we doing by making ourselves the ethics board other than just having a place for it? Are we just then, as the ethics board, going to discuss, do we continue being the ethics board? Is that our only purpose?
My intent was listening to the discussion that we've had here tonight is we need to invest some serious time in figuring this out. In the meantime, we do not have an ethics board, despite the fact that we have an ordinance that says an ethics problem goes to the ethics board. So what I'm saying is in the short term here, well, let's pass that resolution, designate us as the ethics board for the time being, but also invest our time in figuring out, okay, what does an ethics board should look like? We need to make revisions to our ethics ordinance. We need to figure out who should be on that ethics board. We make all those changes moving forward. But if something happens in the meantime, we have something in place to handle it. Does that make sense?
And Michael, would be if we would have a citizen member, we go in a closed session, where does that put them? Would they,
All the same rules we do.
yeah, I mean.
Right, but
But they're not sworn in like we are.
But they would be an official under the definition as it currently stands and as we would implement in any revision. So by dint of choosing service, so Mr. McGraw is with us today. He's a citizen member of he's an appointed member of the JAC, but he's not necessarily a member of the Richland County Board. He is governed by our ethics ordinance because it defines members, boards, committees,
Maybe under the
commissions.
same standards as us.
So yes.
does anybody remember for sure, did we table it or send it back to committee? This resolution?
Your other committees.
We already voted it down and it went to the full board.
No, we decided to move it back to
We
either
moved it back.
committee or
So
resolution.
the full board already didn't want this committee to be the ethics committee, so I don't know why.
No, they decided to send it back to further discussion. That's what we're looking to see if the
Okay,
table.
so be the same.
Table, it wouldn't need to be.
So we had this at the August 13, 2024 Executive Finance Standing Committee. That was in your minutes that were in your packet from last night. And it says, this confirmation of ethics board, Attorney Wendell reviewed the resolution that we have, which is the same thing as this one, declaring the Executive Finance Standing Committee as the ethics board under ordinance 23-6. Motion by Manning, second by Gill to approve the resolution declaring the Executive Finance Standing Committee as the ethics board under ordinance 23-6. That motion was carried and forwarded to full county board for approval. So let me go to county board minutes.
while he's looking at that, Mr. Chair, do we need to add some sort of language in there that gives that intent? Because otherwise we're sending the exact same thing back to the
Right.
county board.
No, we would have to amend it. Mr. Carroll.
When we get to that point, I was gonna ask that we amend it to just add the word interim.
Yes.
Okay, so the final, from the county board minutes, regarding this resolution, I won't read the whole item, but it says, Corporation Council asked the county board what they wanted to know, encourage the board to do their own research and take ownership of the process. The motion, to table it, motion carried, and approval of resolution number 24 at that point, -60, postponed until the September county board meeting. So there was no action taken, anything. It went through here to county board, and then county board said, no, there's postpone it because we could decide. If you look at your minutes from August, it's in your county board folder, you'll see there's a bit there.
So I would
We
assume,
need to make a motion. So I can make that motion that we forward this on with the language included that this is an interim ethics board.
which will,
I'll second.
any further discussion? Move it on to full county board as an interim committee will be here. And with further discussion and work on changing it in the future. All those in favor of moving it on signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Moving on. 13, discussion and possible action, resolution authorizing the borrowing of an amount not to exceed $601,000, 2025 capital improvement.
This resolution here is virtually just do the funding for short-term borrowing of $601,000. We're virtually doing it with local banks this year versus bonding. So this is just a resolution to allow me to go out and put it out for bids.
Is it in our packet? I don't see it.
It's number 13.
Yep.
Do you guys have it in it? Oh, there it is.
I'll make.
Gosh, I'm absolutely blind. I was like,
Supervisor Cooley, Supervisor Glassbrenner, motion by Cooley, second by Glassbrenner. All those in favor of moving it on signify by, oh, Mr. Carroll's got a question.
In the past, we've had a shopping list of what that money was to be spent on. I would ask that we be provided that.
Even though you already approved it,
It was a
the schedule has already been approved.
Right, but now that we're approving this, I'm just saying, what was the $601,000? What were the items that were in the short-term borrow that we're using it for?
I think when they presented it the other times, they had like specific language for it. Is that what you're speaking of?
Yeah, there were very
Language,
specific.
Otherwise you can't spend it on certain things.
Yeah, they probably, and again, some of that language probably came out of the bond drafting. and stuff
Yeah,
like that,
it
too.
did.
Where it's gonna be a less of a formal process, that's why it's not costing the $20,000. They won't have the, but
Then my question, has it been determined what we're gonna spend or not?
Yes, it's already been approved in the capital plan. So
Just asking what those things were, that's all.
thank you.
Thank you, I don't need to know
We
now.
could include that with this when we put it in the county board.
Vehicles and acquiring equipment.
Well, I
It's
mean,
very-
that's a generalized.
Yeah, it's very broad, but that's
Council.
what we use it for every year. I mean, 2 of it's going to squad cars and
and
then
the rest of
that's
it's going to
300,000
MIL.
of it probably, and then
And I
the rest
just
of
wanna
it
see
goes to
That's all.
It's
gross.
like a cover sheet or something.
There's typically the language in it that says the specific projects and then other capital projects encompass various things if there's any money left over from the borrowing. And to Larry's, his point is this process for borrowing is gonna be much different for you guys because it's going to be very less formal. Since we're not going through bond council, Borstal Brady, Wisconsin Public Finance Professionals, all those people that usually spoon feed us every initial resolution, which if you look at past meetings, there's 20 pages of all this stuff. You're not gonna have this, so this is a new process for all of us, including me. I've never not used Wisconsin Public Finance Professionals, so it'll look a little different this year, but yeah, like they said, the CIP plan was approved, but we can attach it to the resolution.
Did you want to put any amendment into it from what's in here that specifies the spending? I mean, like Mark said, it, acquiring equipment, vehicles and technology.
And I think just having a document, I mean, because it's hard to keep track of all of this. I can't recall all of that off the top of my head because I'm not crunching numbers like you guys are doing every single day. So I like to see that, I'm a very visual person, so I agree with him. I like to just see it just.
As long as it's in the county board packet.
Yes, if It's just in the packet, that's all I.
All right, so we can approve this resolution as motioned and is presented, correct? Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the resolution to borrow 601,200, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right. Pass number 13. Oh, boy, laptops. 14, Barbara's up. Discussion and possible action, purchase of laptops for county board supervisors. This probably came from me because these were giving me a lot of issues, but yeah. Anybody want to talk about it? Otherwise, this could be put
I got
down.
an opinion on it.
Okay,
We
this
can-
one I have a question. This one I did not see in the packet.
There's no packet.
It's just a discussion. Nothing's gonna happen. Want her to
Oh,
look into it
okay.
further, we can talk about it next month, we can.
That was- that's what I'm
You're looking for
saying.
sentiments?
Yeah, I think these things are terrible. So, would-
I agree, they are. But we could have Barb come back with some numbers.
But you're looking at, this is not in my budget for next year. Or this year. And it's $17,000 for 21 laptops. And you have to consider there are ongoing costs that we're gonna have that we don't have with the iPads. We will no longer, you will just pull your documents off the website. You won't pull them out of FTV Pro because that's an iPad thing. I'm in support of it, don't get me wrong. I just want to be really upfront with you before I put a lot of work into it.
Can you
Those
look
are
at,
things-
what's the one that's a little bigger than this, but smaller than a laptop? Chrome.
I'm just thinking of plugging a laptop to every.
Yeah.
So, yep, they're 14-inch laptops are what I'm quoting.
Okay.
I'm gonna be very honest with you. I have issues with Chromebooks because I can't secure them properly. I need to have something that I can get good security on, so I'm not putting my network at risk.
My question, Barb, is part of the problem with the iPads, the security settings now?
They're managed by us. I'll be very blunt with you all. I don't mean to be disrespectful. The first person that complained to us that there was a problem was Steve. And when we looked at the server, it's been a problem for weeks, but nobody said a word to us. Nobody told us they're having a
About
problem.
what?
That the documents haven't synced to the
That's,
iPad.
that's
I
not an
just
issue
find
for
it-
a month. I mentioned it multiple times.
But there was absolutely no syncing. We check it, but there was absolutely no syncing for the last 2 weeks.
I've just gotten used to it. Half the time it works and half it didn't, so I just have forgotten it and like use the county website when I wanna look at a packet.
So do we have a support ticket system for us to use as
Yep,
well?
if you send an email to help desk,
All right.
we'll look at it right away.
Well, the only reason I didn't mention it was because I thought it was the same issue that's been happening for 6 months, and I have talked to you guys, and you gave me some ways to try to fix it, which sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. So that's why I didn't bring it back. I just assumed it was another issue. So in that sense, these are not user friendly, because I cannot get things to sync unless we're here. The other issue, and I like that they're super portable. The other issue though is they're extremely inefficient. If you want to be typing an email, if you want to be doing anything where you're actually, it's difficult, even with these little keypads, and things don't all pull up. You can't see certain documents.
Certain documents won't open up.
Yeah, so there's,
And that
those
will-
are the reasons.
Yeah, the document thing is gonna get better with Office 365, because you'll have Office even on these. But if you want the other ones, I can do it. Just know,
17,000 is a lot.
yeah.
For me, it's spreadsheets are very hard to read on the
Yeah,
iPad. If
they're
you
little.
zoom- And then if you zoom, you gotta bounce all over the place. We deal with so many spreadsheets for things, it gets to be a pain.
So do you want me to look at 15 instead of 14? Because then they get heavy.
I don't know that,
What's a normal, what size is?
This one's 15. And this is normal.
I don't want anything other than what I got, so can we still use this?
Yeah, there we go, give us an option.
Give the people who want a laptop to carry around, we can carry it all. Give Gary's paper.
Yeah, I think I'm.
We all go back to that.
Hey, I was
We make them both work.
There's
Probably.
no way to get a security on like
They don't.
That's why they put it on.
That's why they're all so, it's like costume wear.
All right, I think come back.
Should be a supervisor.
Discretion?
Yes.
You have some numbers for us.
Well, I don't care if they're available.
Agree with Mark. Everybody's in agreement with that? You'll have some numbers for us. All right, 15.
Thank you.
Number 15, discussion and possible action, approval of contract with Matrix Electronic Medical Record System. Number 15.
All right, so in December of this year, we will be losing our AHD, which is our medical records out there. That's how we chart, get all our doctor's orders and all that. We have we had Matrix, Epic, and Point Click Care who bought out AHT. Come in, they gave us all demonstrations and everything. Matrix, they came back at, they are waiving our installation fee, which would save us $15,000. They're giving us the first 2 years at what we are currently paying AHT, which would be $30,000 a year for the whole program. All of their installation will be on site. They will come in, they will do our training and everything, and it's all free. They've waived everything, so they're coming in on our own time. If we go with Point Click Care, who bought out AHT, they will sell us one basic package, but any other thing that we want will be sold in separate packages. And Epic, they are $70,000 a year for their packet. They are huge. They're just that big. So what I'm asking is for approval to move this to county board so we could get implemented in October, because it does take 3 months to 4 months, and we will lose AHT December 31st.
Make a motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Cooey, seconded by Gill to move this on to full county board. Discussion from anyone? Go ahead, Steve.
So I didn't catch which one she preferred.
Matrix. That's the first one she talked about.
Sounds like a no-brainer.
Yep. Epic is a Cadillac, but we're not driving.
Sure.
Not yet. Only our finance. All those in favor of moving this on, to go with the Matrix system at the Pine Valley to full county board, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right. We're down to 17, closed session. Oh, 16. Shared vehicle replacement with emergency management and emergency medical services. Mike, is that you? Yes, it is.
Yes, sir. If you don't mind pulling that up for me, Derek. So the first lease agreement that I presented last month was for $71,000. So what the plan is here is to combine a administrative response vehicle. This is not a take-home vehicle. This is the future plan of this is to be staffed 24/7 by a captain level or above within the organization. This would be a paramedic intercept vehicle. This will be your 24/7 on-call in-county emergency manager. It can share deputy coroner responsibilities as well as your initial hazardous materials response under the emergency management purview of things. So instead of buying a vehicle for EMS and emergency management, the plan is to push it all together into one vehicle for now. So initially, like I said, the lease was presented as $71,000. This was not a capital budget item, but it was a neglected need is the best way I can describe it. So the best way I could figure out how to make this happen was to pursue a leasing option versus a short-term borrowing or a giant lump sum payment. So Public Safety Committee has approved this as a shared cost thing. So as you can see, the payment of $1,013.22, 50% of that would be paid by Fund 10 Emergency Government. The other 50% monthly would be paid by Fund 51, which is EMS. I have presented this to the Joint Ambulance Committee. Prior to making a motion on that, they wanted to make sure that both Public Safety Committee, Executive Finance, and County Board would support the concept of leasing, number one, and number two, shared vehicle costs. I wrote in my budget for next year between Fund 51 and Fund 10. the actual shared cost of this were, the fuel is split in both budgets. The payment is potentially split within both budgets as well as maintenance costs. So the reason why it was $71,000 last month is because that included $20,000 for upfitting for all of the equipment, the lights, the roll-out tray for the bed, the cabinet behind the driver's seat for the medical equipment, which even that wasn't everything that the vehicle needed to do all of the things we wanted to do. The good news side of this is the Richland County Ambulance Association, which is a side association of the ambulance service. They're in the process of disbanding the association to reestablish a new association. Old association bylaws don't allow all personnel to be a part of it, but I want everybody in the department to have a voice. All I have to say, in the disbandment to reestablish a new association, they have to either disperse the funds for a specific project or disperse the funds across every EMS agency in the county. So with that, they met 2 weeks ago and have dedicated $28,500 to the upfitting of this vehicle. Therefore, Fund 51 and Fund 10 are only paying for the ticket, the sticker price of the pickup truck of the $51,000. The Ambulance Association is going to pick up the tab for the full outfit, and this will include all of the equipment potentially needed in the vehicle. So the motion I'm asking for tonight is whether or not Executive Finance supports sharing the cost of this lease agreement with Fund 10 with Emergency Management to provide this for both departments.
I make a motion to approve, take it to full board.
Motion by Manning,
I'll second.
seconded by Cooley. Further discussion, Mr. Carroll?
I was wondering if there was a bid process with RFQ going out to more than one.
Was there an official motion for a bid process? No. I can tell you, I went to Philback Ford. I went to Jones Chevrolet. This one is from Philback Chevrolet. I also was in communication with a few different vehicle outfitters. They're like a turnkey solution type where you buy they're the dealer for not only the vehicle, but all the emergency equipment incorporated. Philback Chevrolet was the only one to come back with a municipal lease agreement.
This is nothing to do with you. I'm just pointing out once again, we need a procurement policy.
I don't disagree. And again, I know it's not a perfect situation, but this is the best way in which I've been.
Well, and in your policy, we haven't seek out bids, but if you don't get more than one bid, that's what you get. And that's,
There needs to be documentation that those
Yep.
things were done.
yep. Yep. Further discussion?
Isn't that highway? Josh has to send it to that company.
Yep.
I mean, that's not for this discussion, but
Yep.
it's kind of the same thing there, that we just get everybody doing the same thing. And get done.
Yeah, because I would imagine.
I agree.
Well, and if I may, the procurement policy is ready, but we keep having these really long agendas. And so it's getting pushed to the back burner because we have other pressing items that need attention. So it's ready.
And just to be completely blunt about it, I know the leasing concept is somewhat new, but there was a lot of capital replacement needs that were neglected to be put into a plan between EMS and emergency management. And so leasing options, I think, are a logical way for us to be able to absorb that cost and be able to accomplish these. This is not the first leasing agreement that you are going to see from me that I'm proposing. So if we want to approach this differently moving forward, let's have that conversation to make sure that we're doing it correctly, because this is not going to be the only one, and I don't like surprises.
Nope. Any further discussion?
Well, I know the leasing at the highway department.
Yep.
So I think it's a good thing.
And that was the other point to this lease I forgot. It's a 5-year lease. And then at the end of 5 years, you purchase a vehicle for $1.
June down to 50 cents.
I'll give you the 50 cents.
All right, all those in favor of using this lease process for this shared vehicle at the ambulance service, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, now we're done with 16.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a break, take a recess, closed session coming.
Very long one.
Chris Clements will be allowed, Keith will be allowed,
Yeah.
Attorney Wendell will be allowed, and Mike, you are allowed. And Brian McGraw, yep. Tricia, do you need her with us?
Yes, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Who's the man? Yeah, awesome, thank you.
That's okay.
Okay, well,
You know,
we'll
we'll
send
send
it
it.
back, and then I'll. So I'm just gonna.
Entertaining a motion eventually to go to close.
I make a motion, we go to closed session.
Gary Manning, second by Mark Queen. All those in favor?
Right, yeah. Okay, everybody is, see, at Southwest Tech, we do roll call vote.
Even though we don't have to do a roll or? do you
And
want-
that, I mean, I looked it up, I spent a night looking.
It is not required to do a roll call vote. Some bodies choose to do so because if it's not unanimous, you have to do a roll call. So some just skip the middle step.
So that way, we're all unanimous.
Tom, you're good? Unanimously?
All right.
Okay, give me a second.
Cut down.
Okay, we are.
All right, we are now back into open session and recording. 19 will be possible action on items from closed session. That would enter, do we need a motion?
It's a motion to deny the grievance discussed in closed session.
Supervisor Cooley, Supervisor Gill seconded to deny the grievance that we discussed in closed session. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Any correspondence? Future agenda item, possibility of going to 2 meetings a month. Look into that.
2 hours left.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh, I got nothing better to say, I don't.
Laptops?
Oh,
That's just for William.
no. Well, she's gonna bring that. Code of conduct. Yeah, but are we gonna, thinking to have a separate meeting
For what?
to like code of ethics?
Well, if we have 2 meetings, maybe we can just.
True.
Okay, but is that?
Put it on one of those.
Unless you're willing to commit to just stealing land blades, that's completely appropriate.
Why don't we put that on the agenda and then we discuss it?
Maybe not.
A couple of them on there, and then look at it and be like, yeah, that looks good.
We'll look at Langley and others. All right, we'll get into more agenda items. Yeah, pass the positive word. All right, Mr. Manning.
Let's adjourn.
Seconded by Cooley. All those in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye. Aye. Everybody got it. Thank you,